Of course, it wasn't that I hated school. What I hated was Odd Henderson, the torments he contrived. For instance, he used to wait for me in the shadows under a water oak that darkened on edge of the school grounds. In his hand, he held a paper sack stuffed with prickly cockleburs. Okay, that's what these are. They're very hard, very spiky. Okay. Collected on his way to school. There was no sense in trying to outrun him, for he was quick as a coiled snake. Like a rattler he struck, slammed me to the ground, his slitty eyes gleeful, and rubbed the burrs into my scalp. Usually a circle of kids ganged around to titter or pretend to. They didn't really think it funny, but Odd made them nervous and ready to please. Later, hiding in a toilet in the boys' room, I would untangle the burrs knotting my hair. This took forever and always meant me missing the first bell. Our second grade teacher, Miss Armstrong, was sympathetic, for she suspected what was happening. But eventually, exasperated by my continual tardiness, she raged at me in front of the whole class. "Little Mr. Big Britches, what a big head he has, waltzing in here 20 minutes after the bell, a half hour." Whereupon I lost control. I pointed at Odd Henderson and shouted, "Yell at him, he's the one to blame, the son of a bitch." I knew a lot of curse words, yet even I was shocked when I heard what I'd said resounding in an awful silence. And Miss Armstrong, advancing toward me clutching a heavy ruler, said, "Hold out your hand, sir. Palms up, sir." Then, while Odd Henderson watched with a small, citric smile, she blistered the palms of my hands with her brass-edged ruler until the room blurred. It would take a page in small print to list the imaginative punishments Odd inflicted. But what I resented and suffered from most was the sense of dour expectations he induced. Once, when he had me pinned against a wall, I asked him straight out what I had done to make him dislike me so much. Suddenly he relaxed, let me loose, and said, "You're a sissy. I'm just straightening you out." He was right. I was a sissy of sorts, and the moment he said it, I realized there was nothing I could do to alter his judgment, other than toughen myself to accept and defend the fact. As soon as I regained the peace of the warm kitchen, where Queenie might be gnawing an old dug-up bone and my friend puttering with a pie crust, the weight of Odd Henderson would blessedly slide from my shoulders. But too often at night, the narrow lion eyes loomed in my dreams, while his high, harsh voice, pronouncing cruel promises, hissed in my ears. My friend's bedroom was next to mine. Occasionally, cries arising from my nightmare upheavals wakened her. Then she would come and shake me out of an Odd Henderson coma. "Look," she'd say, lighting a lamp, "you've even scared Queenie. She's shaking." And, "Is it a fever? You're wringing wet. Maybe we ought to call Dr. Stone." But she knew that it wasn't a fever. She knew that it was because of my troubles at school, for I had told and told her how Odd Henderson treated me. But now I'd stopped talking about it, never mentioned it any more, because she refused to acknowledge that any human could be as bad as I made him out. Innocence, preserved by the absence of experience that had always isolated Miss Zook, left her incapable of encompassing an evil so complete. "Oh," she might say, rubbing heat into my chilled hands, "he only picks on you out of jealousy. He's not smart and pretty as you are." Or, less jestingly, "The thing to keep in mind, buddy, is this boy can't help acting ugly. He doesn't know any different. All these Henderson children have had it hard, and you can lay that at Dad Henderson's door. I don't like to say it, but that man never was anything except a mischief and a fool. Did you know Uncle B horsewhipped him once? Caught him beating a dog and horsewhipped him on the spot. The best thing that ever happened was when they locked him up at State Farm. But I remember Molly Henderson before she married Dad. Just 15 or 16 she was, and fresh from somewhere across the river. She worked for Sadie Danvers down the road, learning to be a dressmaker. She used to pass here and see me hoeing in the garden. Such a polite girl with lovely red hair, and so appreciative of everything. Sometimes I'd give her a bunch of sweet peas or a japonica. Those are flowers. And she was always so appreciative. Then she began strolling by arm in arm with Dad Henderson, and him so much older and a perfect rascal, drunk or sober. Well, the Lord must have his reasons, but it's a shame. Molly can't be more than 35, and there she is, without a tooth in her head or a dime to her name. Nothing but a house full of children to feed. You've got to take all that into account, buddy, and be patient. Patient? What was the use of discussing it? Finally, though, my friend did comprehend the seriousness of my despair. The realization arrived in a quiet way and was not the outcome of unhappy midnight wakings or pleading scenes with Uncle B. It happened one rainy November twilight when we were sitting alone in the kitchen close by the dying stove fire. Supper was over, the dishes stacked, and Queenie was tucked in a rocker snoring. I could hear my friend's whispery voice weaving under the skipping noise of rain on the roof, but my mind was on my worries, and I was not attending, though I was aware that her subject was Thanksgiving, then a week away. My cousins had never married. Uncle B had almost married, but his fiancée returned the engagement ring when she saw that sharing a house with 3 very individual spinsters would be part of the bargain. However, they boasted extensive family connections throughout the vicinity, cousins aplenty, and an aunt, Mrs. Mary Taylor Wheelwright, who was 103 years old. As our house was the largest and most conveniently located, it was traditional for these relations to aim themselves our way every year at Thanksgiving. Though there were seldom fewer than 30 celebrants, it was not an onerous chore because we provided only the setting and the ample number of stuffed turkeys. The guests supplied the trimmings, each of them contributing her particular specialty. A cousin twice removed, Harriet Parker from Flomaton, made perfect ambrosia, transparent orange slices combined with freshly ground coconut. Harriet's sister Alice usually arrived carrying a dish of whipped sweet potatoes and raisins. The Conklin tribe, Mr. and Mrs. Bill Conklin and their quartet of handsome daughters, always brought a delicious array of vegetables canned during the summer. My own favorite was a cold banana pudding, a guarded recipe of an ancient aunt who, despite her longevity, was still domestically energetic. To our sorrow, she took the secret with her when she died in 1934, age 105. And it wasn't age that lowered the curtain. She was attacked and trampled by a bull in a pasture. Miss Sook was ruminating on these matters while my mind wandered through a maze as melancholy as the wet twilight. Suddenly I heard her knuckles rap the kitchen table. "Buddy!" "What?" "You haven't listened to one word." "Sorry." "I figure we'll need 5 turkeys this year. When I spoke to Uncle B about it, he said he wanted you to kill them. Dress them, too." "But why?" "Well, he says a boy ought to know how to do things like that." Slaughtering was Uncle B's job. It was an ordeal for me to watch him butcher a hog or even wring a chicken's neck. My friend felt the same way. Neither of us could abide any violence bloodier than swatting flies. So I was taken aback at her casual relaying of this command. "Well, I won't." Now she smiled. "Oh, of course you won't. I'll get Bubber or some other colored boy. Pay him a nickel." "But," she said, her tone descending conspiratorially. Will the Uncle B believe it was you? Then he'll be pleased and stop saying it's such a bad thing.